Not many changes. We buy a few grabbers for the cleanups and some trash bags. So the parks account has $14,767.82. The operating account has the $10,229,002. We didn't do the tree sale this year. We just gifted some wreaths to the neighborhood, so we didn't really make much there. We'd normally expect a bump in that. The scholarship account is the largest change. It now has $39,347. Partially due to our past fearless leader, Andrew Partham's passing, and all of the gifts given in his name approaching 22,000 now. So very exciting, but also we'll have to work hard to give out a lot of scholarships this year to the neighborhood seniors who've had a tricky year in their life. So that's all I got.
Great.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks. And we'll talk a little bit more later on tonight about the scholarship committee and also about some of the other things we're doing with some of the money that we're fortunate to have received from various sources. So I just wanted to remind everyone that we will be having our annual Blackstone Franklin Square Neighborhood Association board election in our May meeting. And so if anyone's interested in serving on the board or finding out more about what it involves, please reach out to us at some point in the next couple weeks so we can talk with you in advance of the election in May.
We would love you to join the board. So if you have even the vaguest interest, please give us a call. We'd love to explain what's involved and get you involved in our neighborhood association. Thank you.
Do you want to say a word about the dog conversation, Tony?
Yes, so not only are we looking for wonderful community interested people to join the neighborhood association, but also if you're a dog owner and invested in just the overall health and safety of all dogs and all people, we really love you to join the Square Dog and the Friends of the Squares. So there are many ways to be involved. If you don't want to be on the neighborhood association, please consider joining the Square Dog and all Friends of the Squares.
Thanks. Can we bring up the picture of Jeffrey Street? If we have it.
David, just a quick question to follow up on what Tony was just talking about. Tony, is there a particular proposal in place within the Square Dog or within the organization to move forward on a proposal following the last meeting with the Parks Department, or is that still in flux?
Well, I think what we need is some very committed leadership on the dog owner side, Steve. So we're still looking for that leadership in order to, put forward proposals and to move this conversation in a great positive direction. But without the leadership, we're just a little bit, we're a little stuck.
Right.
Tony, if I could,
there are a lot of good ideas, but actually operationalizing them or even exploring them further, we need more people power is the bottom line here.
So if you want a dog park, if you want anything, we need leaders who we would partner with those leaders in order to, petition the city and overturn passive park status. And, whatever direction those leaders want to take the squares, we would be very happy to partner with the dog committee for raising money, raising funds. Just there are many directions to take the conversation. We've discussed them at length at many meetings, but we could definitely have a dog specific meeting if people want to understand what has been proposed and whether anything interests anyone to take further.
Thanks.
Was there a question? I think there was another dog question. I just wanted to make sure that anyone who has a dog question gets that question resolved.
If you're bored, Steve Fox, you can help us.
We know you don't have that much to do.
Thanks, Maddie.
Before we start, I just wanted to call your attention to Jeffrey Street, which is up on the screen, which is probably the newest street in the South End and maybe even the city. And it connects, as you might guess from the location here, it connects East Dedham and East Canton Street behind Harrison Avenue. And it was constructed as part of the reconfiguration of that block when the Smith was built. And I just wanted to say who it honors. People may know, but it honors Jeffrey Hull, the late Jeffrey Hull, who was a very long time resident of the South End, lived for many decades on East Dedham Street, raised his family there with his wife, Deborah. He was an artist and a teacher. He came to many of our meetings, as has Deborah, a friend. And so he passed away in 2017. And it's just sort of wonderful that at least this can be sort of an honor of somebody who made such a big difference in the South End for so many years and was such a big part of this part of the neighborhood. So I just wanted to note that, Jeffrey Street. So with that, I think Captain Sweeney.
Sure. And I was actually wondering, I wasn't sure about that Jeffrey Street when I see it.
Well, they just put up the sign recently. So it's great.
Yeah, I seen it. Good to know where that came from. Good evening, everyone. Appreciate you having me on again. On behalf of D4, I just want to again, thank you, David, Tony, Jonathan, Matt, for all the support you give to us down at District 4. The officers really appreciate it. And as we roll into another spring, when I seen you the other night down at the cleanup in the park, just kind of amazing where 2 years ago, you were picking up, 30, 40 needles in the park during your cleanup. And if I remember correctly from the other night, I think it was 1 or 2, which is kind of amazing in just 2 years, how we've kind of transformed Franklin Square. So that's great to see. The start of the year in the park, it's been very good. We're seeing some sporadic activity in there. Today, one of the officers was, jump the curb, driving through like they do all day, and seen some drug activity on one of the benches. Pretty sad. It was a 63-year-old gentleman that we called EMS. He had to be Narcan there. This is like 10:04 a.m. So, we got him the help he needed, and, not looking to arrest someone in a case like that. There was another gentleman with him. We're just trying to, obviously get them the medical help they need, and just, let them know we're not going to stand for this activity in the park. So we assisted him, and those are popping up once in a while. But, when we look back last year, I know there was a lot of complaints about some issues, on West Springfield, about people sleeping in the doorway of the Blackstone school. We worked with outreach on that, the best team, and we're not seeing that anymore. And I know some people migrated last year over to the church, where there was some concerns right on Shawmut Ave by Blackstone Park there. And, we worked on that issue and we cleaned that up. So, going into the springtime, that's what we're looking to do. Keep what we have going over the last couple of years in the parks, and hopefully we just have a safe year and everyone can enjoy the park. District wide, I know a lot of people on this call were involved with, Mass and Cass, and it was great having groups of people come out last year, at Washington, Mass, and it seems like, it's looking much better. The connector coming off the highway looks better. Unfortunately, a lot of this has moved over to the C6 side, and, Captain Boyle's dealing with that over there. But as far as D4, we're looking pretty good right now. Still issues, the 600 block between Harrison and Washington with some people, some drug activities on the stoop. We're addressing that. But it looks a lot better from what I'm seeing, and people can let me know what they feel. Much better than last year. Some stuff that's popped up around the area. We're having a big issue with graffiti down around East Berkeley Street area, in and around Shawmut Ave, the end of Shawmut Ave at East Berkeley. A lot of property damaged, and it seems like it's a year for graffiti because a big issues down around Fenway Park with that, where, you know, we made a few arrests of some serious damage, and turned out to be one of the kids doing it was dealing some drugs down around Charles Gate East. So we handled that down there. You know, we worked with the, you know, I know the Villa, you know, hopefully we're putting a plan together for the summer. Hopefully I can get some of my officers on bikes. Officer Mike Coppinger, you all know Officer Mike is in the parks nightly up there, you know, with staffing. I'm hoping to get someone else up around there also, and, you know, work with the Villa Victoria. You know, sometimes I know that impacts your area, and just have a quiet summer with, you know, drinking that we see up there. So starting to put that plan together now, and hopefully we have a nice quiet spring, you know. And you don't over police the dogs in the park, but, you know, it's kind of gone up the chain a little bit to headquarters and got back to me. You know, we do our best, but, you know, when we're trying to deal with quality of life, drinking, drug activity in the parks, smoking, you know, people have kids there, marijuana smoking. We're trying to keep that out of the parks. And a lot of the people that I address that with, if they're just smoking cigarettes or something, they come right, and I'll point to the sign, and they do come right back at me saying, well, it's also not right that these people have their dog off the leash. And they're right. I'm pointing to a sign that says both things. So, you know, we've talked about it. We don't over police it. I know it's a touchy subject, but, you know, just do your best with that when we're in the park, or if someone complains to you, hey, just throw your dog on the leash. Because there's a lot of people over at Blackstone, Franklin Park, Franklin Square, that are over there with their dog on a leash because they don't want to be on the other side. And it seems like a lot of people, since we've cleaned up Franklin, have migrated over to the other side. So just something to keep in mind. You know, it makes it a little easier for us. And, you know, people think we are the bad guys, but we're trying to keep the parks clean with these other quality of life issues. And hopefully, you know, as Tony mentioned, you can get together and we can come up with a plan to kind of help us all out in this. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take them. But like I said, appreciate all your support up there.
Thank you, Captain Sweeney, so much. Does anyone have any questions for Captain Sweeney? That's great. That's a first.
It is. You must be doing your job really well.
Yeah, I guess.
Wow.
As we all think you are. Thank you.
Just one question, David, before, do you want to talk, Captain, just about the BEST team and the fact that we have a new deputy superintendent for the BEST team that's actually going to be, that's replaced Deputy Superintendent Stratton, and that we've actually augmented the number of officers in the BEST team?
Definitely. You know, Boston Police has a street outreach unit, which was under Deputy Stratton. The sergeant that worked under him before, Peter Messina, is now taken over, promoted to deputy. Peter does great work. I've worked with him for years. His street outreach unit has just gotten a new sergeant, and I believe it was 5 more officers added to him. And, you know, the BEST team itself, we work great with. We have Lauren Schneider, who is unbelievable. She drives around with officers, and to see how D4 has bought into, you know, this new style of police and having, you know, it's volunteer. They don't have to have her in the car with them, but you wouldn't believe how many times on the radio every night it's like, is the BEST team working? Is the BEST team in? Because we're obviously dealing with a lot of mental health issues and substance abuse issues. And, you know, where officers were, you know, reluctant to put their name on a form, a section 12, to have someone committed. A lot of good things are happening. And obviously with some changes in policing, it's the wave of the future, which is good. And it assists us at D4 having someone on location. And they're working on getting us another one for D4. I know Lauren's training someone now for, I think it's either C11 or B3, and she's going out on the calls. So it's great. And it, you know, people don't realize what's going on with it, but there's some great work being done. And I hope that explained it. I think someone was asking, but you know, that handles some mental health calls with us on the district.
And the best team, I just posted it, is Boston Emergency Services Team, correct, Captain Sweeney? That's
Correct.
best. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
It's new to a lot of us on this call. I hadn't heard of the best team till tonight. Isn't that weird? I knew.
Yeah, it's great. The best.
I knew that. I didn't know that was the name.
Yeah, and like she dealt with the issues up with the homeless at the Blackstone school, you know, and issues where we see repeat people with, you know, mental health issues down Copley. Like I'll come in, I'm like, Lauren, can you do a run up on this person? She's like, yep, we've seen him 3 times over the last 2 years. This is his history, you know, and we work with her and, you know, getting up. And West Roxbury Court's great with us on some of these issues. Judge Coffey, you know, getting people the help they need.
The best team also deals with all adults and kids with acute psychiatric emergencies, like who come to the hospital. So, so they're used to dealing with kids and adults. And so I didn't know about this project, but I think it's amazing that they're doing that and they have a ton of experience. So
thank you, Dr. Riseberg. That's awesome. Thank you for that insight into the best team, everyone. I hadn't heard of it. I just looked it up now when someone asked what is the best team in this call. Thank you for asking the question. Well, who was it asked?
Steve.
I asked. It's Chloe.
Oh, Chloe, thank you for asking. Thank you for asking. I was like, whoa.
My daughters are part of a swim team. I just put this in the chat. That's called the Best Team that practices at Blackstone Community, which is Boston Elite Swim Team. And so I was really confused.
I bet.
The swim team for children versus what was happening with the police department.
Okay, well, yeah. Good clarification,
Thank you.
Chloe. Thank you, Dr. Riseberg, and thank you, Captain Sweeney.
Sure.
That's awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. So our next item is going to be that the scholarship committee co-chair, Jenny Watson, is going to give us an update on the application process and what we're doing this year. And as Matt alluded to at the start of this meeting, we're in a very fortunate position because of the generosity of so many donors giving in memory of our friend Andrew Partham. So we really want to do a great job with that this year. So Jenny.
Thanks. So I'm here representing my fellow co-chair, Lisa Jenks, who many of you know, who wasn't able to be here tonight. And I think a lot of people on the call probably know a fair amount about the scholarship program, but for people who don't, I'm going to just explain it really quickly and hoping to drum up some interest from people who might want to serve on the committee this year. I've done it myself in past years, and it's a lot of fun and very rewarding. And as David just said, and as Matt said, this year it's a particularly light lift because of the generosity and outpouring of support in Andrew's memory earlier this year. So the history of the program is that since the mid-2000s, the Neighborhood Association has offered scholarships to high school seniors who are South End residents or who are involved in a South End community organization and are planning to attend college or another higher education program. There are $2,000 scholarships, which is a significant help, as you can imagine. And that can go toward the cost of books, computers, and other supplies and fees. And what's important about that is that those things typically aren't covered by financial aid and often aren't covered by other scholarships. So this is really meeting a need that many other sources of funding don't cover. We also offer a $3,000 Andrew Partham scholarship, named in Andrew's name, obviously, and that's given in recognition of outstanding community achievement. I know most people, if not everyone on the call, knows that Andrew was a longtime member and leader of the Neighborhood Association. He created the scholarship fund. For everybody who knows him, he was just a remarkable guy, kind, concerned for the neighborhood, just really devoted to this scholarship fund and the young people that it serves. He did such a great job over the years with many, many, many dedicated volunteers. And since the scholarship committee and the program was founded, have raised a total of $180,000, which is quite significant. So as David mentioned, we're just launching this year's round of scholarships. Lisa and I are actively looking for volunteers to help serve on the committee. This is a really important year for several reasons. One is that the pandemic has hit families in our neighborhood pretty hard. Some of you who were at one of these meetings a few times ago may remember that our friends from St. Stephen's told us that 90% of the youth involved in their programs have at least one family member, sometimes more than one family member, who's lost a job since the beginning of the pandemic. So, there's great need for assistance like this. And then second, and quite obviously, the program is such a wonderful tribute to Andrew and everything that he contributed to the neighborhood that we especially want to honor his memory this year. So we have several terrific committee members who've stepped up to help, are looking for some more. This year's work will be a pretty light lift and a lot of fun. We're looking for volunteers to help with a few different things. First is helping with some outreach to local youth organizations to help spread the word about the program existing and encourage applications to make sure that everyone knows that these funds are available. The second, which is really a lot of fun because you get to meet some great young people, is interviewing the applicants. We do that as sort of a team approach. So you get to meet with some other committee members, meet some great kids, and that will be happening over a couple of meetings in late May. And then the third piece is helping to plan and execute what we hope will be a very nice but a simple celebration in early June to honor the graduates and the scholarship recipients. Lisa is exploring some event planning resources for this. So again, none of this should be particularly onerous for anyone involved, and should be a lot of fun. That's it. This is a terrific way to give back to South End kids who are pursuing an education. We're really hoping to put together a solid committee. I can just say personally that I've really enjoyed being part of it. So if you'd like to help, we would love to have you. And you could be in touch with Lisa and me at the Neighborhood Association email address, which is bfsna@blackstonefranklin.org. And I can just put that in the chat in a second. And we're hoping to have our next meeting next Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock over Zoom. That seems to work for some of the committee members so far, but if others are interested and that's not a good time for them, we'll try and figure out a time that accommodates everybody. So really looking forward to a great program this year, and hope to meet a lot of you through the committee process.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny. I feel like wearing another hat and joining you. You did a very good job explaining that it's not going to be a lot of work. It's not very onerous.
Come on down, Tony.
Oh, no, honestly, because it's the event planning. There's a lot of stuff that feels very intimidating with something like this. But as you mentioned, it's really easy this year. I mean, Andrew's provided the money, guys. Andrew provided the money. It's our job and it's our obligation to make sure that that gets into the hands of the youth and those kids who need it the most. So please, if you even vaguely feel compelled to help Jenny and Lisa, what an awesome leadership team. And it looks like I'm gonna throw my hat in. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you.
Come to the first meeting, anybody who's interested.
I will.
If it feels like too much to anybody,
okay,
we'll give you a pass, but just come try the first meeting.
You'll
get a big kick out of it.
That's great. So can everyone, if you can, just join the first meeting. David, can we share the details of that first meeting next Tuesday at 6 p.m. so that everyone can just kind of feel out whether they've got the cycles to do the interviewing or any aspect that Jenny mentioned. But thank you, Jenny, for making it feel easy to join you. It really does. Thank you.
Jonathan, do you want to speak about the
Sure.
initiative?
And David, if you just want to chat in the details for how people can get involved with the scholarship in the chat while I set this up.
If we could just be fairly concise here, because we're
Jenny's going to add the details in the chat. Thanks, Jenny.
Okay. So moving along to the next agenda item, I'm proud to announce a program that BFSNA is launching in conjunction with SEBA. Hopefully my screen is sharing right now.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
To
Very
give a little
exciting.
context, and I'm going to introduce Elizabeth, who's the president of SEBA, which is the South End Business Alliance. But just to give a little bit of context on this pilot program and where it came from, a couple of months ago, I was having dinner at Elephant Walk in the South End and talking with one of the co-owners, Richard, and we were trying to figure out different ways that we could support both our local restaurants and our local businesses, retail institutions. And we're just trying to think about different ways that we could try to create almost like a multiplier effect where local dollars could circulate within the community. And Richard actually came up with an idea around that could be twofold, an idea where, you know, folks could support a restaurant and support a business. And we started talking about it, and we figured maybe one of the ways to do that would be to create an incentive when folks shop locally to get rewarded with a gift card to a local restaurant in the area of those retail businesses. So Blackstone Franklin Square Neighborhood Association, through some of its fundraising efforts and through some mitigation monies that have been provided to us by local development projects, has some money in our bank account. And through our charter, one of our missions is to support neighborhood initiatives, to support neighborhood businesses. We were in a position to provide some capital, some funding to support this idea, to purchase some gift cards and to distribute them to some local retailers that would then incentivize patrons who shopped to then have the money come back around. So creating a bit of a multiplier effect. So when we were thinking about how to operationalize this idea, since you know, we could play the role of providing some of the funding with the neighborhood association, you know, I thought there, you know, one of the perfect organizations could be SEBA, South End Business Alliance, who has relationships with all of the different businesses in the South End. And that's when I reached out to Elizabeth, who we've invited to the call today. We're going to give a moment to introduce herself and a little bit more about this program as we started to put together the pilot, Buy a Bite. So what you're looking at right now is a press release that will go out to explain the details. This is meant to be a pilot. Our hope is that this will grow. But before I steal too much of Elizabeth's thunder, I want to turn things over and ask her to briefly introduce herself and share a little bit more context around this program and where we hope it to go.
Thank you, Jonathan. My name's Elizabeth Butel. My day job that pays my mortgage, I'm the director of sales at the AC Hotel in the Ink Block. And my second volunteer gig is I am president of the South End Business Alliance. I took over the role in October of last year and working to really redefine what the South End Business Alliance does. Today, we support all businesses in the South End, whether you're a member or not. So throughout the pandemic, we have provided resources to access grants, PPP. We provide mentoring. It's an organization that is completely made up of volunteers like yourself. And we work to provide a resource to small businesses to be able to help with human resources, marketing, business structure, financials. We don't get involved in like the social issues. We leave that to Steve Fox and the neighborhood associations. So we primarily focus on the mom and pop businesses within the four walls of the South End. And we work to develop new relationships between the South End and other organizations like the Greater Boston Convention and Visitors Bureau, Visit Boston, other business associations to kind of expand our sort of like our footprint in the city. We work to get money from the state and the city to fund and promote the South End, which is our main goal, is to promote the lifestyle and the businesses within the four walls. So these kind of initiatives that are brought to us are perfect. We've also taken over recently the strolls that you've seen that previously South End Local had done. Moving forward, SEBA is actually taking those on, and the next one will be in mid-May. It'll be 3 times as big as they've been in the past to really kind of make it a full-on event for the community to participate, which is going to be kind of fun. And then to do the Buy a Bite program, I mean, Jonathan, listen, we we hit the ground running. You guys came to the table with the funds. Jonathan ran around to the 5 restaurants and got those on board and those gift certificates. We went out to 10 retailers, none that conflict with each other, that are based within the Blackstone Franklin footprint or the adjoining Union Park Square area. So on the press release, you'll see the Cuckoo is there, M. Flynn Jewelry is there, Lecker Home is participating, Urban Hounds, Bar 3, Honey and Comb, Tweed Barber, Salt has now joined on, Soma Optical. So we have a good group of solid business owners that are willing to kind of give us a measurable tracking for this. We've never told them how much money they need to reward a consumer with the gift card. They came in $20 increments. They each have $500 to kind of spend. So something at Lecker Home, which is minimum, like $2,000 is probably their entree, right, for what you have to buy. They may give $60 or $100 worth of those gift cards to get $1,000 sale. Tweed's Barber has decided it'll be new customers that come into his store. He'll give a $20 gift card to one of the restaurants. So we're letting the businesses decide how they want to use and distribute those gift cards, but we have asked them to provide tracking so that in turn we can come back to you, Blackstone Franklin, and say, this was the measurable success. Like, this is how much revenue generated off giving the 5,000. I would love to come back and say a $5,000 investment turned into $25,000 in business revenue in the community. So we're working on, everybody pretty much, with the exception of 4 businesses, have packages that incorporate the overview. I've given each of them like a one-on-one tutorial about the program. Have all given written authorizations that they've signed on to the program and that they've received these gift cards, and that we're here to support them. In addition, SEBA is going to work with you and the community to market it. So we'll be using social media, press releases, word of mouth, what other avenue that we can get through some hard print. Our goal is also to try and get maybe some major media to do an interview on it. So we'll keep you in the loop on that. But I think it's great. I think, a lot of the business owners are excited about it. They were happy to have it. At first they were like, oh, do I need to do something? And it was nice that we kind of rolled it out, gave them the envelope, gave them the details, and they're going to really run with it. So we've kind of put that decision in their hands. But so far, so good. So far, so good. I don't know if anybody has any questions. Look, so easy. You guys are so easy.
No, I would just say it's been a pleasure to partner up over the last couple of weeks to go out there and execute this idea. And what I would say for everybody on the on the group, this is a pilot. We're hoping that this continues. We're hoping that Blackstone Franklin Square can be a regular participant, but that other neighborhood associations join in. Support the restaurants and the retail in their districts. We're hoping to attract maybe some corporate sponsors that want to participate, all with the goal of creating that multiplier effect. I mean, I think it's no surprise that the pandemic and just other conditions have really devastated our local economies and our small businesses. And any way that we can try to, keep the money local and multiply that money is a win. So it's been really great working with you, Elizabeth. And
Thank you. We did actually bring it up on the last board meeting. So Eve Ward is actually head of our neighborhood association relationships. So she is actually scheduled to call with local neighborhood head honchos at the end of the month. And we're going to roll it out. I have another board member talking to his neighborhood association to see if they also have the funds to be able to do it. The nice thing is that this is already packaged. So it's not like anybody has to recreate the wheel. The template's already there, so we can kind of keep moving through it, which is really nice. We did put a call to action to try and see if we can get, corporate partnerships to kind of help us grow and expand the program. So yeah, I think we're off to a great start. I think, it's definitely a feel good for everybody, which I think they need. And then Jonathan, at some point in the future, I told you I was working on some statistical data on the South End and businesses. So comparing how many businesses we've lost or gained since 2019. So once I kind of drilled down a little bit further, I'm going to share that with each of the neighborhood associations so they can see the big picture of what was the big hit or the big losses and what were the big gains, because we did see new businesses in the South End during the pandemic. We just didn't see new restaurants. So less feeding places, but we did see some new businesses just in different industries. So hopefully I will be able to share that with you probably within the next like week and days.
That would be fantastic. And when can folks expect to see a formal announcement of the program Buy a Bite through social media, through your website?
I would say probably the end of the week, by Monday, the latest.
Okay, great. And is it okay if people check out SEBA's website if they want to see access the press release if they don't see it on social media, where they'll have a list of the participating retailers and the restaurants?
Yes. So what we'll have is on the homepage of the website, we'll have the logo, which will link to another page that will talk about the program, who's actually participating. And then there'll be also a piece that says like, hey, if you want to have this program or participate as a corporate sponsor, you can contact me to kind of do that. So.
Wonderful. Okay, so if anybody has any questions, I mean, maybe Elizabeth, we could put the SEBA website in the chat for people to, if they're not able to find it, to reach out and get more information. But be on the lookout for this launch. This is a pilot. We are very enthusiastic. I can tell you personally, going around to 5 different restaurants, collecting the gift cards. I mean, people's jaws dropped. They were pumped. So we're hoping that this thing works. We see the dollars circulate and we can get more people to participate and help our South End businesses and beyond.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Okay, David, I just wanted to call on Domingos, DeRosa. Domingos, do I pronounce the S and I'm not supposed to? Please
Tony,
correct me. Let's start with how to pronounce Domingos.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and introduce Domingos, Tony. I didn't know if we were doing the Shattuck next.
No, Domingos next.
Okay, so yeah, I can introduce Domingos DeRosa, candidate for at-large city council. Much keeping, I guess, in tradition with how we historically invite, or if a candidate reaches out to participate in one of our neighborhood associations, we'd like to give them the opportunity, and Domingos had reached out. Personally, I've gotten the chance to know Domingos pretty well over the last summer. I had the opportunity to stand with him on the corner of, with many of you on the corner of Mass Ave and Washington Street, when we did the joint standouts with folks from Lower Roxbury and the South End to bring attention to an issue in the South End that is in Lower Roxbury in the city that's affecting most of us, related to the opioid crisis and homelessness. So I got a chance to know Domingos, and as I stood out on that intersection with him week over week for a few months, I got to know more people that he knows, and I got to see that when it comes to being around and being available and being present, there's almost no event too small and no area too small for him to be in. And I'm proud to introduce him tonight as a candidate running for city council. I don't want to steal all of his thunder because I'm sure he has a lot to say, but Domingos has been a great advocate for this city, and you'll find him if you're out and about walking around. You will find him out there. He definitely is out there in the community, walking around and being present. So, Domingos, if you can, if you're still on and you can hear us, please introduce yourself to the neighborhood association.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm very humbled to be here tonight to talk to a lot of you folks, a lot of faces that I know. I just want to get off the campaign chair for a second. I wanted to say hi to the doctor. Annabelle says hi. She looks forward to speaking to you offline sometime down the road. But yeah, my name is Domingos.
Oh my gosh, I just realized who you are.
I knew you was gonna eventually you'll figure out who it was.
Annabelle gave it away. I love it.
Well, she's doing great in school. She's working her tail off like she always does. Annabelle's my wife for the group, but yeah, my name is Domingos DeRosa. I'm an immigrant. I migrated to Boston in 1979 as a 9-month-old baby. with my immigrant mom. My dad came before my mom did, so he was able to set some things in place. So when we did arrive, we had a home. My mom had a place to raise a family and be able to obtain the American dream. So as I grew up in Roxbury and Dorchester and graduating in 1996 from Madison Park High School, I later then went on to, in 2005, I graduated from Franklin Institute on Berkeley Street with an associate's in applied science. I spent 22 years as a City of Boston employee working for Boston Centers for Youth and Families. And it's, you know, when Chloe says her children swims for the best team, I see a lot of my swimmers are still coaching. That was one of the programs that I helped initiate with Nadine Johnson when I worked with BCYF to make sure that children in low-income communities had the opportunity to access a competitive swim program to help them elevate their skills in the pool. So, you know, as a BCYF employee, I was able to travel the city and interact with all 23 communities, teaching life skills such as lifeguarding, CPR, first aid, AED training, and so forth. I later then became the chapter president for my local, where I spent 12 years as the chapter president, 4 years as an executive board trustees, making sure that members and folks who are newly hired to the city fully understood what it took to be a union member and a City of Boston employee. I later then, in my journeys within the union, I became one of the leading organizers, where I was able to bring in 5 different departments within the city to come down and work under one contract, where I learned more and more about how the city budget affects every single one of us, from property taxes to excise taxes to the school department to the law enforcement, and, you know, basic direct service, as we used to call it, you know, folks who provide direct services. I started to understand the importance of community, of being able to have community partnerships, to involve others who might not have the same ideas, but live in the same community, and how can we bridge the gap? And that was one of the reasons why I became politically involved. I started to notice how we were being kept in these silos within the city, but we were all working on some of the same issues. As I gained interest in politics, I started to hear the same conversations amongst us, the people, the folks who are here advocating for a better quality of life. And it draw me to the conclusion that there wasn't fair representation on the city council. So I decided, along with my family, that, you know, this would be a part of my calling in life, is to be able to come in and connect folks with different services across the city. I devote my time to the youth and families within my community on my off time. I coach football. I've been part of the Pop Warner circuit for over 25 years. I have a boys mentoring program that comes out of Clifford Park. I'm a part of a few different community associations, like the Poor People's Campaign, the newly erected South End Roxbury Community Partnership that organically came together to work on this issue, that it's a human issue. The stuff that goes down on Mass and Cass, we continue to see the numbers grow. You know, it's great to hear Captain Sweeney speak on how him and his officers are able to provide folks with services and help bring the community services to the individuals instead of having the individuals look for the services. So that gives me inspiration to go back and bring in folks on my side of the city and say, hey, you know what, maybe we need to work with not only Captain Sweeney, but our own captain within B2, C6, and C11 to address some of the issues that we have regarding gun violence, regarding traffic, regarding the ATVs that we see up and down our streets these days. So, you know, there's an array of issues that we face today as Bostonians, but one that sits out in front where you can see day in, day out is what's going on Mass and Cass. I've been very vocal on how to, I guess, organize around the issues that we face. But the real issue is we continue to allow this to be a conversation. There's a lot of solutions that we as a community have suggested, but it's been on deaf ears, and it continues to be on deaf ears. We want to enhance and support what work folks are doing. But at the same time, as a community, when we only hear bits and pieces of it, and our elected officials seem to only address issues in the front, things that come up on current events versus things that have been lingering around, such as this issue, brings me to the Blackstone Association tonight to gain your support, to include you in some of this journey that I'll be setting forth into the next few weeks and months. So I'm here tonight to ask you for your support. And that support comes in many ways. It comes in, gathering signatures, phone banking, gatherings amongst your neighbors, donations in any form. Because even these days, as I try to, innovate ways of getting people involved, it doesn't always equal a number, a share, a post, an endorsement. It's all beneficial to a grassroots campaign like my own. The folks that are supporting me are common folks. These are folks who are trying to shorten the $8 gap to the $276,000 gap in the city of Boston, to give the opportunities in the construction fields to folks where we have $2.2 billion in city contracts, and only 1.2% is awarded to Black and Brown businesses. So things of that nature is the reason why I'm here tonight, to see if my vision of Boston is something that you can take partnership into, to be a voice for the voiceless, to take your abilities and your skill levels and share it amongst others communities across Boston. When I sit here and listen to, a scholarship fund that's close to $40,000, I mean, in my head, I already have like 50 kids that can take advantage of $500 scholarships to help offset, some book costs. So that enlightens me to hear that you guys have a park fund where you're able to provide other services along with the city services to your community park. I coach out of Clifford Park, and for years I would have to beg and plead with the city to pick up needles before my team took field. On a day-to-day basis, I would pick up 200 to 300 needles, and for one individual and maybe 2 or 3 volunteers to comb a park of that size day in, day out is very tiring. But then to hear that you guys are able to go from 50 needles to 3 needles because of the community's effort gives me more inspiration to continue to advocate, to continue to bring in others to the conversations so we can make this difference. I don't want to ramble. I appreciate being here. I have a lot to say, a lot of the things.
We believe in you, and we'd love your details, how we can follow you. Can you put it in our chat so that if anyone can just get involved, get behind you, that they can do that? Would you be able to add your details to our chat?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And we will
I just like to wrap up by saying I'm a family man. I'm a BPS student. I've never left Boston. It's my home. I've seen the transitions from the trains above to the trains below. I've seen buildings come and go. I've seen how we can be Boston strong, how we can unite on the forefront of a lot of the issues that we face as parents, as family members, as constituents. It's a great opportunity, not only for me, but for folks who live on my side of the city to see how we can merge 2 communities as one, because Boston is one city, regardless of the different zip codes. So yeah, I'm excited about this campaign. I'll share my information. If you guys have any questions, feel free. I drop my my website, my email, and my phone number for you to get a hold of me. If you'd like to volunteer, if you like to share, just sharing. I'm open ears. I'm willing to learn as much as I can. So, when we do get a chance to represent, we actually represent all concerns and matters.
Thank you for that, Domingos. We really appreciate it. Please share your details with us so that folks who are interested can get involved to hear your vision. Domingos DeRosa, at-large city councilor. Thanks for joining us tonight. Appreciate it. And I'll see you out there at some of the next events.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Riseberg, we are very behind schedule. I do apologize for keeping you waiting, and I apologize even more to those people who are here for the Shattuck conversation as well. I do apologize. Robyn, would you please give us an update on what you have been doing with Boston Community Pediatrics? I walked down Albany Street and I saw something phenomenal. Can you tell us what you're up to?
Yes, thank you so much. And I will be quick because I know you guys have a lot going on. But I've actually loved hearing the conversation because there a little bit of everything that everyone's talked about really applies to what we're doing. So Boston Community Pediatrics is the first nonprofit pediatric private practice in Boston and one of the first in the country, and it's right in the South End. I think similar to like what Domingos was saying, it really is meant to be bringing the community together. And we've been doing lots of different things. We're seeing patients, we're doing COVID testing every day for our patients and the communities, and especially partnering with a lot of the early childcare programs. And on the building, what Tony's referring to is we have a partnership with Artists for Humanity. I'm not sure how much you guys know about them, but they basically employ teens from the city to do art, and then they put it up in buildings, or they put together exhibitions and exhibits for different organizations. And so we are really fortunate. We have an indoor exhibit right now, and then we have an outdoor mural that's that the kids did this summer. NSTAR was a part of it. The city was a part of it, and it's now up on our building on the corner of Albany and Wareham. And it's these kids. It's all portraits of kids with masks. And it's on the brick outside building. It's this really cool material that doesn't ruin the brick. So we were able to get permission from the building, and it's very colorful, and all the kids have masks on. It's definitely worth taking a walk to see. And inside the buildings, that's what's going on outside. We are seeing well kids, sick kids. We have a very integrated model. So we have integrated mental health services right on site. We have an integrated care navigation manager and wellness coordinator who are getting kids into after school program. We have our own Girls on the Run. We are, connecting people with food. As I know someone mentioned before that 90% of the families involved in some organizations had lost one job. 60% of our patients right now, which actually are a mix of mass health and private insurance, are food insecure. So we are partnering with other organizations around the city like Project Restore Us and Commonwealth Kitchen to get food to our families, which has been an amazing help. We are trying to get the vaccine to help vaccinate, especially teachers and early childcare providers and the community, especially focused on Black and Brown communities, and have put together something that I presented at the City Council hearing called The Power of the Pediatrician. Because imagine if you were eligible and can get your shot while you were at your child's appointment, and didn't have to, try and get your appointments and take time off of work to even get an appointment or be at the appointment. So we're small, we're scrappy, and we're interested in seeing all the kids in the neighborhood, and are growing exponentially. We started, and when they talked about businesses opening in the pandemic, we opened on November 16th, and we had about 150 patients. We now have over 550, and so people are coming, and it's a beautiful space. It's small. It feels very much like a private practice, but we're really centering the patient around all we're doing. And we are really interested in being involved with the community, whether it's doing, helping people learn more about the vaccine. If we do get the vaccine, doing community vaccine clinics, whatever we can do to support the schools, the daycares, the other after school programs, and all the great work that people are doing, we want to be a part of it. So
Thank you, Robyn.
Thank
Robyn,
you.
can you add your Boston Community Pediatrics website to our chat, and just so that
Right.
anybody can get hold of you?
Absolutely. And we'd love to refer scholars too. So when you reach out for the scholarship program, we'd love to.
We would love to connect with you. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank
So
you.
sorry, but so sorry we have left no time for questions. I know everyone wants to speak to Robyn, but we have to get on to the show.
Yeah, no. Go. But please feel free to reach out
Thank
or come
you.
by and visit too.
Oh,
Thank-
we will.
Thank
We
you.
will. My kids are coming. Bye.
Thank you, Robyn. So I'll introduce the next topic, which is the Shattuck. And I apologize, we are running late tonight. We've had a lot of great content and it's been wonderful, but I know that we're about half an hour behind what we said. So we are gonna go past 8:30. One of our guests, Assistant Commissioner Frank Doyle, has kindly agreed to stay longer. Our other guest, Undersecretary Lauren Peter, has a hard stop, so we understand she may have to leave us, but we will have this conversation. I know a lot of people have come tonight, especially for it. So we will, we will have a complete conversation, notwithstanding the time. So let me just tee it up really quickly, if I could, which is just to remind people, the Shattuck Hospital is a state-operated 260-bed medical, surgical, and psychiatric hospital that serves what I think it's fair to say are some of the most vulnerable people in Massachusetts. It's currently located in Jamaica Plain on a campus over there. But due to the poor condition of the facility, the state determined that it was actually more advantageous to move it to a former BMC building at 88 East Newton Street. And that's gonna happen sometime in around 2024. So Undersecretary Peter and Assistant Commissioner Doyle are here from the Massachusetts Department of Public Health tonight. And they're gonna be speaking about the future operations at the hospital when it does open, the construction schedule, and the changes to the physical facility on East Newton Street and what's that going to mean for us as neighbors. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Frank and Lauren. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, David. And thank you to the members of the Neighborhood Association for having us back to provide an update. It's nice to see many of these familiar faces, but for those that I have not had a chance to meet either in person or over Zoom, my name is Lauren Peters. I'm the Undersecretary at the Executive Office of Health and Human Services, and I'm joined by my colleague, Assistant Commissioner at the Department of Public Health. So David actually did a nice job sort of teeing up. You should join our team and do these tours with us, providing these updates, because you did a great job just sort of with providing an overview of what the Shattuck Hospital is. Currently one of the public health hospitals that the state runs in conjunction with the Department of Mental Health and the Department of Corrections. As David noted, the building in Jamaica Plain is beyond its usable life. And after considering a number of options, we identified the former BMC hospital building in the South End as an optimal solution to relocate the hospital services. Now, I wanted to note, for those that are not as familiar with this project, there are sort of two moving pieces related. One is the hospital relocation, and Frank will give provide some more details on the timeline and specifics of that. But I also did want to note that in parallel, once the hospital services relocate to the South End, we are planning and have been planning for the redevelopment of the Jamaica Plain campus, which is about 13 acres. We have formed a community advisory board, of which we have several residents of the South End partaking in that community advisory board to develop the vision plan, because we do see that site as a potential site for many of the substance use and addiction treatment services. We see that as a optimal location for many of the services. There are some services there today, but is part of a broader regional planning in conjunction with the city. We are plugged into their work on Long Island, but I wanted to call out, because all of these various projects are related. We are fortunate enough to have residents of the South End participate on the Community Advisory Board for the redevelopment of Jamaica Plain, because we are looking at this as a whole, and making sure that no one neighborhood is disproportionately impacted by a set of services versus another. And so we do see various opportunities here, both at the South End site for the relocation of the hospital services, but also for the Jamaica Plain site as a potential site for supportive housing and substance use treatment services, many of the services that we know that there's a real critical need for. So the redevelopment planning process is well underway. We are hoping to go out with an RFP for a developer later this year. And as David mentioned, the plan for the relocation of the hospital, we are on track for 2024. But I will turn it over to my colleague, Assistant Commissioner Frank Doyle, who will provide some more details on the timeline and specifics of the project.
Thanks, Madam Undersecretary. And thank you, David, for inviting us again, having us back, and for your help in scheduling and getting us on the agenda for tonight. Congratulations to the South End for all of the success you've been speaking about for the past hour, and how much you're making our new neighborhood, which we'll be joining soon, a beautiful place to be. So the Shattuck Hospital, the background on it, you've heard. The building is there. We're built in the 50s. The public health mission of the hospital, however, has remained the same throughout all of those years, and that is to deal with, as was mentioned, many of the most vulnerable populations in the Commonwealth, substance use disorder, homeless, chronically ill, and underserved. It is true that mission throughout the years. It has an incredible history of responding to public health crises, the AIDS epidemic, all the way up to the latest pandemic, if you will, from COVID, and everything in between that has hit us over the last 50 more years. And we carry that mission, and will carry that mission to the East Newton Pavilion, as Lauren mentioned, and I believe David as well, in 2024. When we last met, the time schedule was 2022 for us to move into the East Newton Pavilion. But you can imagine that with COVID, among other issues, it has taken us much longer to get to the place where we're at today. So the intention is to bring all of the current hospital services that are being provided in the hospital campus at Jamaica Plain over to the East Newton Pavilion, which includes 117 DPH beds, again, chronically ill. Long-term acute care is the definition for all of our patients, because they have higher acuity of care, oftentimes come to us as referrals from acute care hospitals like Boston Medical Center, Tufts, and others, when they need for continued high-level acute care goes beyond a certain period of time, normally around 3 weeks for most academic medical center hospitals. They then look for what would be called somewhat of a step down, and that step down is our long-term acute care hospital, especially for these patient populations that I mentioned. So we've served that role for all three of the agencies, DPH, DMC, and DOC patients through these years, and we'll be bringing them with us over to the East Newton campus. The DMH side of the house will have 115 beds, and the DOC side of the house, Department of Corrections, will have around 30. I say around because due to COVID, as you can well imagine, there was a lot of change in practice at all hospitals. The whole question about how many patients could be in one room when a virus like this one struck, the transmittability of it was all new science to most of us back in January and February and March of last year. So we're trying to build in significant infection control enhancements into the design that we had been working with in order to take the experience that we had, particularly last spring, but into this fall as well, and make sure that should another pandemic of this level hit us after we move in 2024, hopefully we'll be long past this pandemic by that period of time. But there could be another one around the corner, and we don't want to miss incorporating all of the lessons we have learned into the design of this building. What a shame that would be if a pandemic hits later and they say, gee, they were right in the middle of it. They didn't learn anything. They didn't incorporate the many lessons that they had learned. So we've done that. We've added them into the building. And for that reason, I mention it because some of the lessons that we've learned around cohorting and sharing of bedrooms with patients in that situation has led us to believe that we need a few more rooms than we have in Jamaica Plain. And I mean under 10 more rooms across the hospital. So we're trying to beds, not rooms, 10 more beds into the hospital so that when we have to pull one bed out of a double room because there is a person with a transmissible disease in a pandemic situation, we would have enough room to be able to maintain at least enough beds for that would meet what we just experienced back in the spring of this past year at each of the agency's units. So we've been incorporating that. Our user groups, I had mentioned the last time we spoke, have been deeply engaged in the design of all of the patient flow. We'll be offering, inpatient services for long-term acute care, as I said. We offer a full array of diagnostic services. We have operating rooms. We'll be using 4 of the 11 that were in there during the East Newton Pavilion operations by BMC. We'll be using 4 of those. The others will be turned into other med-surg, is what they're called, bed spaces. So it's a very similar size. It will be operating with the same services that we have had, full plethora of services that we offer in Jamaica Plain. Some of the services that we offered on an outpatient, these are mostly inpatient. All of these beds are inpatient. We also offer outpatient services, mainly to the Department of Corrections and the Houses of Corrections patients. We only have a panel of about 200 or so patients. Most of them, as I said, are corrections patients. Some are community patients that have spent time on the inpatient side of the house and have come back for follow-up care or whatever. And some have been real community patients that lived in Jamaica Plain, so that they would be unlikely to follow us, but they may. And some would be patients that we were receiving from the vendor services that are currently provided in Jamaica Plain, which will not be coming with us, as Undersecretary Peters mentioned, when we move to East Newton. They will be staying on the campus in Jamaica Plain, really for 3 reasons, I think I mentioned last time around. One is the building. We're going to fill the building with what services we're going to provide in the long-term acute care space. Secondly, many of the same vendors that are providing services currently over in Jamaica Plain on campus already have a second site or their primary site already in the South End or nearby the South End, like Pine Street, et cetera. And so there's no need for us to bring those vendors with us. And thirdly, I think there's a lot of new opportunities for us to be able to integrate ourselves now in a much more robust healthcare environment. We have healthcare for the homeless nearby. We have Boston Medical Center. We have Tufts down the street. We have South End Community Health Centers. We have Dr. Rosenberg's new practice up the street. So there's a lot of services in the South End. And a lot that were not over in Jamaica Plain and are not in Jamaica Plain that we now will be able to integrate ourselves into and the BU School of Medicine as well, a much more robust program with all of the other healthcare providers in the area. So I'll try and truncate a bit because I know you'd prefer to get to questions than hear me speak. So timeline, as the Undersecretary mentioned, so there's an agency called the Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance, DCAM, people refer to it as, and that is the state agency that owns, maintains, and manages all of the property and buildings that the state occupies. DCAM currently is the owner-operator of the East Newton Pavilion. When we move in 2024, the Department of Public Health will become essentially the owner and definitely the operator of the East Newton Pavilion. Right now, our role is to advise and help with the design to make it the perfect design for the operations that we require clinically when we do move in and open up in 2024. We expect right now it'll be second quarter of 2024. So backing up from that, the construction period will lead right up close to that date. It's a heck of a job, as you can understand, moving patients, services, equipment, et cetera, even just across town. It's Herculean. And so all of that preparation has to be done. The construction will be about a 2.5-year construction period. The active construction will begin this July. By active construction, I mean demolition within the building. Some of the utility services and upgrades will begin. And then the more externally visible construction parts of the project, parts of the construction project that will be more evident to all of you will be the facade. We intend to reclad the outside of the building largely for energy savings and cost savings, and to bring it up to par with the governor's executive order around energy savings and lean buildings, if you will. That's a standard for architecture. And so that'll be the biggest piece of the puzzle, the biggest part of the external visible construction. That won't begin until the spring of 2022. So that's a little bit of a year away. So backing up from start of construction in July of this year, we're trying to conclude all of our input with the design right now through probably the middle part of March. DCAM will then take the designs that their architects have done with all of our input, and they will go into construction packages, as they call them, circulate them to the construction companies that will be working on site, on the property, and that will lead up to, as I said, the start of construction in July. I want to, not by way, we started with a minor project. There are minor projects that have gone on, quite minor, over the past 8 months or so. It started with a soil sampling in the alleyway behind East Newton Pavilion. And we are indeed having another soil sampling tomorrow at 3 spots in the alleyway. I think it's 12 spots all around the building, many of them which were done today. 3 will be done tomorrow. It does create some noise, does impact our neighbors in the condominium units that abut that alleyway and where they park. We've tried to be careful to notify them, provide sufficient police details to help with those traffic issues that might rise to becoming impediments to those condominium owners. Try and time it so it's not impactful during the time that they're leaving for work or coming home. But it is only 3 drill sites tomorrow. So hopefully it's not too intrusive. We did send a mailing to everyone that we had an address for. I did drop some flyers on people's cars' windshields over the weekend. We do have it on our website. We have an active website, which will become more active to keep you all apprised of projects that will begin to escalate in number and impact as we move toward full construction. There were a number of issues, and I just want to call it out early before the questions begin. There were a number of issues. I had promised to try and be your advocate and your liaison, if you will, on this project from the DPH side. There were some issues that were raised over the past 8 months. Sorry, I'm talking too much. By abutters, the lighting in the back alleyway, the switch was not working. So there were many weeks, very unacceptable period of time, both to me and to the abutters, when that back alleyway was in darkness, particularly after daylight savings time last fall. There were issues with trash. and there were issues with needles. And we have had snow removal issues, and we have been asked to remove the bushes that abut the ramp. I tried to work with DCAM to get those issues all addressed. They have been addressed now. There is regular cleanup weekly. I drive by there quite often. The lights have been back on for a month or so. The snow removal, first snowstorm hiccup, where the contractor did not clear, where we told him to, has been cured over the last few snowstorms. And so we hope that will address the neighbors' concerns with that. I was very disturbed to hear that some were actually shoveling out our responsible walk area. Saying I have made the request of DCAM to remove the bushes. That question was also raised by one of the abutters. So I thank you for your forbearance. I thank you for not throwing me to the curb too quickly on this. We're trying our best to address the issues that are raised, but indeed it has not been satisfactory to me, never mind, and most importantly to the neighbors. So I want to recognize that up front. So let me just throw it open. I have a lot of information I can give, but let me ask the questions and more.
So Frank, first of all, thank you. And Steve and Fernando, I see that you have your hands up, and I promise we'll get to your questions shortly. Let me just ask you to speak to one other thing that you didn't touch upon, but matters to some of the people on East Brookline Street. And you mentioned to me when you and I talked last week, which is the Department of Corrections aspect, the physical operation of that, how that will work, where the vans will go. And for people on the call who are not familiar, one of the clients, if you will, of this facility is the Department of Corrections, and they bring people from the House of Corrections or state prisons on a daily basis who may need services. You know, maybe they'll stay overnight, but sometimes just for a few hours. They come to this hospital. This is one of the hospitals that serves that population. They come in Department of Corrections vans. They are, shackled. They're accompanied by corrections officers, and there is a whole security protocol that goes around that, which is going to affect the physical layout of the facility, which you can speak to. And then also there's a question of where the vans will park. So if you could just briefly describe that for the benefit of those who live in the immediate area.
Well, you teed me up very well. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, David, rather. So these the transports are vans, as they're called, from both the houses of correction and DOC. You've seen them in the neighborhood because they've been going to BMC for years. Most often you see them wandering the neighborhood looking for some place to park while they're waiting for their patients to finish with their visits. We have, as I mentioned, both the inpatient bed units at the current Shattuck and the future Shattuck at East Newton, and we have outpatient services. And as I said, about 60, I said before, if we probably have about 60% of our outpatient services are indeed offered and received by prisoners and people from the houses of correction. And they come on a daily basis. There are probably about 24 or so patients seen each day that come in from the houses in the DOC for outpatient services, and then they return to the prison or the house of correction. That requires around 15 transports each day. Many are just one patient, some are more than one. And I'm talking about peak numbers. I'm not talking about average. I'm talking about the peak numbers that we see when the transports come. So, and they do come to us for primary care. They come to us for diagnostic care. They come to us for many, many different outpatient services that we provide. So the way that the transports will come as designed now, and we're getting close to design being wrapped up, so I don't expect any changes to this. They will enter East Newton from Albany Street, come down past the dental building. The front of the East Newton Pavilion will largely, it's going to be completely renovated to a nice plaza, and There are some renderings that are being developed, which I'm sure we'll be able to share with you sometime soon. It's going to be pretty nice. Hopefully, people will agree that it's a nice presentation to the neighborhood in the front of the building. But that plaza area is going to be reserved for ambulances and shuttles, where a lot of DMH patients come in by shuttle, and other cars that need to drop people off or pick people up. There won't be much parking on that plaza level. The transports will not go up there. The DOC, HOC transports, they will take another half a block, and where the old ambulance entrance was for the emergency room, which is the driveway right at the end of the East Newton Pavilion building, they will pull into that driveway. It will be restricted and gated only for those vans, transports. No other foot traffic or vehicular traffic will be allowed. There will be a staging area between the street and up to the entrance into the building, which will stage 3 transports on that driveway. And then there'll be a sally port is what it's called, which is a fenced in area that opens and closes around the transport and during the transition of the prisoner from the transport into the hospital. Patient will leave the transport under guard, be received by guards inside, go to a holding area, and then go to whatever services they're seeking that day. The transport itself will go down the end of that driveway where the parking lot is beside the DOC garage and take a right up the alleyway. And then when you get to the end of the alleyway by the ramp, there will be some spaces provided for those transports to sit while they are waiting to be called back to pick the prisoner back up through the sally port. So that's the location we're seeing right now on site.
And so just to be clear, so the area that's down at the end of the East Brookline Street alley at the Albany Street end that currently has the overgrown shrubs that have become an issue because people sleep back there that you've agreed to remove, which is good, thank you. But that area is going to become a little parking lot, is that correct?
They're going to be angled parking spaces there. As I said, the maximum number of transports that we see at highest peak, which is rare, right? 14. There would be 3 spaces that will actually be on the ramp that can be used, up to 3 spaces. And then they're planning how many they can have at angular parking so that the transport can pull in and out easily in a very narrow turn area there. But there will be spaces right there where the shrubbery is now that we were referring to.
Okay, thanks. So Steve and Fernando, you've both had your hands up for a few minutes. Let me start with, I don't know who had it up first, but let's start with Steve and then Fernando, you'll be second.
I actually have a 2-part question. One is primarily for Frank and the other is for Lauren, if you wouldn't mind me splitting you guys. Frank, the first question, I'll just get them both out and then you can respond. One of the things that you told the South End when you announced the move of Shattuck Hospital to the Newton Pavilion was that this was going to be a turnkey operation, that it was a beautiful situation in terms of the ability of the state to save huge amounts of dollars as a result of not having to refurbish a crumbling Shattuck Hospital and move into a ready-made hospital at Newton Pavilion. So now we're learning that this hospital is not going to be ready until the second quarter of 2024. And obviously construction is going to be an expensive proposition. So what I'd really like to know is what's the difference between doing the refurbishment at Shattuck Hospital and the amount that it's going to be spent as budget dollars to do an outfitting of Newton Pavilion, which we all assumed was going to be pretty turnkey because it was an already established hospital with hospital rooms and facilities. So I'll just give my second question, if you wouldn't mind, and then you can both respond. Lauren, you and I have actually had this conversation before in a previous meeting, but as you are well aware, there are some 400 plus people that are currently located in COVID hotels, what we call COVID hotels in the greater Boston area. And that has resulted from the governor's emergency declaration. So we've got 400 people that are currently in spaces that have been able to avoid zoning restrictions and a lot of other restrictions, that once we begin to close those facilities, and once the state ceases to provide leases for those facilities, will find their way elsewhere. And many people in the South End and in Lower Roxbury are very concerned that they will find their way to Mass and Cass. So if we're talking about 400 plus people that are ultimately going to be emptying out from these COVID hotels, this is something that we, both the city and the state, need to talk about in terms of preventing a massive overflow of new population into the South End, Mass and Cass community. So what I'd really like to ask is a dialogue with you and the secretary and others to talk about a way for us to use the existing COVID hotel structure to try to mitigate the opportunity this spring and summer for us to be dealing with a huge problem that we're going to experience at Mass and Cass if we close down these existing facilities. Those are my two questions.
Sure. So Frank, I can take the latter, and happy to chime in on the first two. But I would say, I think what I heard is a request for a dialogue and a partnership between the state and the city to ensure that once the isolation, the hotels cease operation, that there's not a sort of, all of those individuals are not funneling into the Mass Cass South End area. And so you have our commitment on that. We've been partnering throughout the course of the pandemic with the city on a number of these initiatives, and certainly would expect that to continue throughout the coming months as we have some light at the end of the tunnel with respect to the pandemic. And again, I understand and very much appreciate the concern that all of those individuals will end up in the backyards of many of the folks here tonight. And so you have our commitment that we will make sure that that process is done thoughtfully and in collaboration with both the residents and the city of Boston.
Lauren, just to add to the conversation, one of the things that many of us have been talking about is being able to extend the leases as a result of the new relief package, that we now have money to be able to potentially extend the leases and potentially use them not only as COVID recovery centers, but also to use them as entry-level treatment centers so that we can begin to address the pressing need for addiction recovery beds and moving people out of the streets and into facilities. So that's the larger conversation that I think it needs to have.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Certainly, and I can take that back, the piece about some of the opportunities of the federal funding extensions. I can't sit here tonight and tell you that I know, how exactly all those funds can be used. Many of them have strings attached and various conditions and for limited uses, but we'll certainly take that idea back. And we do have an open door policy in terms of we're always willing to have the conversation, and we'll make sure that we are continuing that that coordinated effort throughout the next couple of months as we start to think about what life sort of post-pandemic looks like, and and how we are managing many of the populations that have been dislocated because of the pandemic.
So
Thank you, Lauren.
If I can take a shot, Steve, and obviously Undersecretary, if you want to add anything. So, to the numbers that you were talking about. So I believe the public numbers that were presented some 3 years ago in a comparative between what it would cost in Jamaica Plain and what it would cost to move to East Newton. We're in the range of expectation of around $200 million to rehabilitate East Newton, 400 to renovate Shattuck, the building that's at Shattuck and Jamaica Plain, and upwards past $500 million for a brand new building on the campus in Jamaica Plain. As with any project, those are estimates. They're at the time that the estimates are made, and they're with the knowledge that is given at the time and known at the time about what the conditions of the building are and the requirements within the building. So this, the budget for this building and East Newton Pavilion renovations has not been finalized. Many reasons for that. The initial budget was over $200 million. However, as I mentioned, there have been tens of millions of dollars added just for infection control alone. There were a number of conditions in the building that were not understood by the engineers at the time of the assessments that were made earlier that require additional work than was anticipated. And there are new additional, as I mentioned, environmental, lean and energy savings projects that have been added to the overall project, like the new facade, the new cladding on the outside of the building, which will also give us more insulation. So the biggest, aside from those things that have been added to the budget and have not been finalized in the total budget recap yet, we have all the processes I mentioned before, Steve, where we've been giving all of this information and help with the design, and that budget reconciliation on what they call the fit up side of the project, or fit out side of the project, which is all of these operational considerations and what the nursing station and what the call station is and how many, you know, what type of lighting you're going to use in the surgical suite, all of those things. That is all coming to closure now, has to go through budget reconciliation in April. So a firmer number will be out sometime late April or in May. I couldn't really give you a hard comparative right now. But I think the kind of spread between what it would cost in today dollars as opposed to 3 years ago for the same project we were talking about doing if we stayed in Jamaica Plain, and the escalation of costs just over the last 3 years, and addition of IC infection control measures, et cetera, it's still a significant savings to the Commonwealth to move to East Newton Pavilion. The Department of Public Health units, by the way, within the East Newton Pavilion are largely are going to be maintained the exact same way they were set up for Boston Medical Center. It was 1985 that building was built. So it's a very old building in East Newton as well, but we don't have to change around all those DPH bedrooms. The DMH bedrooms, on the other hand, need all sorts of ligature mitigation measures that have never had to be incorporated at BMC because they didn't have those type of patients, psychiatric patients in those units. And obviously the DOC build out is completely new. There were no corrections beds in there. So there's a lot of that involved too. So I hope I'm not trying to dodge it. I'm just trying to lay out the complexity of trying to give comparatives.
Thank you, Frank.
You're very welcome.
Did you get your questions answered? I think it is. Did you get your questions answered, Steve?
I did, David. Thank you.
Okay. Fernando, go ahead.
Yes, I have met Secretary Peters and Mr. Doyle before. And one of my big concerns was what was going to happen with the campus in Shattuck. And it was mentioned by Ms. Peters that there is a commission or some group that is advising on how to use that facility in the future. Of course, it was, at the time, I was told that it was going to be still dedicated to public health and that it would not change. Because there has been a lot of pressure from Jamaica Plain residents. I would like to have more open space yet, more than what they already have, which is totally ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. And I hope that the state's going to be firm on the issue that this has to be dedicated to public health issues. And among them is housing for homeless, for one thing. Another one is probably, I don't know when Long Island, if ever, is going to be rehabilitated and the hospital or the facility that is proposed for Long Island is going to ever happen. But I think Shattuck has the possibility, at least in an interim basis, to provide some sort of a facility that is going to take care of this problem, at least temporarily. And the other issue that was mentioned by Steve, the question of what's going to happen with people when the leases are out on the COVID hospitals. We have a problem in the neighborhood already of concentration of all of this type of facilities, especially now the Roundhouse is one of those COVID hotels, and it's supposed to be vacated in 1 year from the time that they started using it. And I would not want that lease to be continued. Our neighborhood is not happy with it. We're never very happy when they started using it as a COVID facility for the homeless people. So anyway, those are my main questions. But I wanted to know, who is a member of this committee that is working on the Shattuck Hospital? Who are these people of the South End that they're representing us? My neighborhood, at least I don't know. Who are they?
I can answer part of that. Just I'm on the task force, Fernando, and so is Desi.
Okay, well, we haven't heard anything about what's happening with that commission or that committee. I think, I don't know if it has met. What's the status of this plan? Or what's happening? We don't know anything about it.
Sure, okay. So I can take that. So what we established was what we called a community advisory board. We called it the CAB. And it was made up of representatives from both the Jamaica Plain neighborhood abutting the property, as well as some representatives from the South End. So as Steve mentioned, we were fortunate to have Steve and Desi participate on the community advisory board, as well as Sue Sullivan, who I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but she has been a sort of vocal and advocate for making sure that the disbursement of services is fair, and making sure that we're not overloading one unit over another. So the community yep, right. And so the community advisory board met for over a year, meeting about, I think, like every other month, every 3 months, and helped to formulate a vision plan. And the vision plan is a document, and I'm happy to send a link to this group. And the vision plan will be used to inform the RFP, which is essentially the document that will solicit bidders to redevelop the space. So it lays out the principles, just as you are advocating for, that this must be consistent with the land use requirements that must be used for a public health purpose. So consistent, one of the emerging themes from that process was that there was the identification of the need for substance use and more behavioral health type treatment and programs, as well as supportive housing. We all know that there's a critical shortage of housing and particularly supportive housing in the city, in the surrounding region. So all of those principles are incorporated into this vision plan that, again, will be the foundation for the RFP that DCAM plans to issue later this year, and will then solicit bids for the developer. And to your point, we are looking at ways in which that we can phase the campus, because again, it's a 13-acre campus, and we are looking at ways to start, if there is a possibility, and again, I can't make any commitments at this point because we are still investigating, but if there's a way to get programs and services up and running prior to the relocation of the hospital in 2024, that would certainly be ideal, because again, many of these services there is an immediate urgent need. So we are looking at ways to phase the campus redevelopment.
Hi, David. May I speak?
Yes, Cinda, go ahead.
Okay. I live at 107 East Brookline Street. Am I coming across too loud?
No, you're good.
Okay, good. Near Albany Street. And I want to go over some of the issues that we've had down here and that I need to discuss them because I think it's important since so much has happened down here at this end of the block over the years. First of all, David, I want to thank you for inviting me to participate in the discussion regarding the Shattuck in your neighborhood. Just a brief discussion of the property that the state purchased. It's not only the 88 East Newton Street building, the loading dock area, but the alley off of East Brookline Street that runs between the back of the Naval Blood Building on one side and 109 East Brookline Street lot on the other side. Could I take a few minutes more, David?
Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you. The end of that alley intersects with the alley off of Albany Street that runs along the back of East Brookline residences all towards Harrison Avenue. I want to inform you of some of the issues that we have had since the state purchased that property. Many times I've looked out the back of the window of my house and thought that the state's outdoor area along the side of the loading dock appeared to be neglected and at times leaving the impression that this area had been abandoned. That look, and we're talking quite a long period of time, that look, as far as I am concerned, provided an attractive place for the following: areas for drug activity, for personal bodily functions, for sleeping quarters, as well as for trashing the area. The alley off of East Brookline Street, which is adjacent, as I said, to 109 East Brookline lot. Behind the wooden fence, directly behind, if you walk down East Brookline Street, you'll see that there's a fence across the alleyway. That area behind that fence has been used for the same purposes and still being continued to be used in that way. Over this period of time, I have made phone calls and sent emails to the appropriate person about these problems and other problems occurring on the state property. In fact, I have made repeated calls concerning issues which were not being addressed in a timely fashion. Frustration started to set in, and I was no longer interested in hearing apologies and excuses. I am not the only one down here at this end who has experienced frustrations with the responses or the lack of responses in a timely manner from the state. Up to this point, I have not shared this information. I have attempted to handle these issues on my own, as I have done with some of the issues down here on East Brookline Street. However, now that I have shared it with you, with all of you, I'm hoping that this response problem changes and changes now, as the renovations of the inside and outside of the buildings are about to begin. At some point, I had suggested to this state person that cameras needed to be placed along the alleys off of East Brookline Street and Albany Street. They need to be installed now, and that the monitoring system needs to be placed in that building, 88 East Newton Street. And come to think of it, I'm not sure if there has ever been any security surveillance used in that area since the state has purchased it. Among my other concerns, and I do have many concerns, I would like to mention just one more. When I stated to this person that we did not want our streets to be used as smoking areas for the Shattuck's employees and clients, and that the smoking area that BMC in the past had established on a patio above the loading dock. And this was after the neighborhood fought back in 2012 to get BMC to go along with this, that area, above that patio area, should continue to be used by the state. The reply that I got from the state, from this person, is, oh no, there is no smoking on state property. This has just got to, there has just got to be an exception to this. Since the placement of this hospital in a small area is in a highly residential area. I want to make it clear, I certainly support any kind of help that can be done for the unfortunate people who end up with addiction, who end up being homeless, who end up needing medical care and don't have access to it because of finances. That's not my issue. My issue and my concern is that how is this property going to be managed starting at this point? Lastly, I am hoping as of now that we down here on East Brookline Street are taken seriously, that in order for the Shattuck to be successful, their relationship with the surrounding community has to be successful. That's my these are my comments.
Thank you, Cinda. And I, as you know, Cinda, I live on East Brookline Street as well, and I go down that alley all the time. And as I told you, Frank, I observe all the same things that Cinda just referred to. So it's a very real concern. One action item, Frank, that came up is, and Cinda alluded to it, is that overgrown shrubs at that end. And can we get a commitment that those will be removed before the before the weather really heats up and people start sleeping outside, because that's what they attract?
Well, let me just say that they have been removed.
No, they haven't. The ones I'm talking about are the low shrubs.
Okay, well, I might not have noticed them, but
okay.
Okay.
But we're talking about we're basically talking the same point, and I just think that getting that done, Frank, would be really important, both as a improvement to the neighborhood and as just a show of good faith and responsiveness.
And Cinder is always kind in her presentation of problems, and I want to thank her for that and her patience with me and with the project. I do not make excuses. I do give explanations when I can. I did try and explain a moment when I was speaking earlier about the issues that Marie and Cinda both raised to me right back to the early fall of last year that were not completed on anyone's adequate timeline, to anyone's satisfaction. I don't point fingers at which agency is responsible for what.
Right.
But when requests come in to me as the lead for the Department of Public Health, then I have to go to DCAM and request that these things be done, that they hire a contractor to do the alley cleanup, that they do the snow removal better and get the contractor and whack them in the back of the neck for not cleaning during that snowstorm and all of those items. So I'm just explaining how it goes, not making an excuse. There are no excuses for the way we started off to a very rocky start with our abutters. But I do promise you that I will continue to fulfill that role and do my very best. As I mentioned earlier, I have already put in the request. I think it was it might have been by Marie back in September of last year and then Cinda later about removing those bushes from that area. And David, as you mentioned, you and I have talked about it as well. I have already put in that request to DCAM. I'm hoping to get a expeditious removal. I have stressed to them how important it is, not only for what the property looks like, but the security issues that it raises when you have homeless and drug addicted folks utilizing it to live in, which will be becoming more prominent in the better weather. We better get it all done before then. So that's the request that's in. I hope to have a prompt response from them. I do not have it yet.
So thank you. So Marie and Tony both have their hands up. Let me just ask you or raise one other thing. So Cinda touched on it, the issue of smoking and whatnot. And one thing that I think will be maybe a slight positive in that regard is the introduction of what you're calling the Sally Port, that secure area where prisoners will be placed in and out of the van. That's going to eliminate the pedestrian passage between East Brookline and East Newton Street through that area. And that's going to mean that people coming out of the facility, be they employees or patients, they're not going to be able to cut right over to East Brookline Street. So I think that may actually somewhat ameliorate the issue, not solve it necessarily, but at least be a slight positive in that regard. So Marie, you've been waiting. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Hi, Mr. Doyle.
Hi, Marie.
Hi. So, David, what you just said, I'm confused about how that area is going to be used. So right now, where all the shrubs are that are dying, the trees, the pine trees that are dying, that look, and that there's like right now outside, right now there is a suitcase and clothing and bottles and a lot of other junk out there. So this has not been cleaned up regularly. I have to disagree with you, Mr. Doyle, that it's not, even though perhaps you request that it has been, it's not being done, cleaned regularly at all. And I have never requested that those shrubs be removed. I would like them just to be taken care of. I want it to be returned to the condition that BMC took care of. It's a beautiful place, that little parklet. It was nice to look out my window and see some greenery, and now it's the opposite. It looks like it just looks horrible. So now what I'm assuming though is now that you didn't want to take care of it because you knew that it was going to be a parking lot anyway. Is that why?
No, it just was not, again, I don't want to make excuses. It was not part of any plan to remove that shrubbery before move-in or construction began. And so we've really been in a holding pattern. There's no staff over there in the East Newton building. There's very limited interior security staff and very, very limited interior maintenance staff. I think there's 4 people there that essentially just take care of emergent issues like a water leak or an elevator goes down and those kinds of things. So there's no DPH staff in there at all. These are all DCAM staff. So just by way of explanation. So when we have an issue, I've got to get them to get a contractor to solve the issue. And I've been trying my best to do that. No excuses for the time frame whatsoever. Just by way of explanation.
More than 2 years. No.
Pardon me?
It's been about 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely unacceptable to me too. But
is there a number that I can reach DCAM on?
So
can I call them?
There's an on-site manager. He's there 3-4 days a week. His name is Mark Swingle. I don't have his number right readily available now. I can send you certainly his number and his email address. Generally, Mark is the one that I go to if I don't have to go above him to get something done that gets too delayed. So immediate concerns Mark can help with, and I'll certainly get you that information, Marie.
Thank you.
And then,
go ahead.
As this progresses to construction in July, the full construction team will take over all of these responsibilities for the whole site. As far as, obviously they're going to have construction trucks on and around the site, and construction workers, electricians and plumbers, etc. So they will take over much of these things. They will have scores of people on site every day, and hopefully that will make it more efficient, not less efficient than the current process has been for you. And again, I apologize publicly and privately.
Thank you for that. Can I ask one more question? Are we going to be able to see a plan before this happens? The kind of a plan for what the construction will look like, or the plan for, for what the building is going to look like, what it's actually going to.
So I will bring that back and see if we can set up something through Steve, maybe at a future meeting when we get through this design phase and there's a more solid rendering, particularly from the outside. So we could get something scheduled perhaps at a future meeting, David.
And I think, didn't Frank, you tell me that the project is going to have to go through the usual City of Boston public review process? Is that?
That's correct. For all the permitting that's required of any building, we have to conform with the local ordinances and the local building code. So all of it goes through ISD as well. Just all of the normal processes have to be met.
So that will also be an opportunity for people to comment on the design.
All of those.
Okay. Tony?
David, only if there's an appeal, a Board of Appeal piece that's required, right?
That's not what I thought I understood Frank to say, but I'm not
Yeah, that's my clarification. The ISD process doesn't require any public comment unless there's a variance requirement. Correct, Frank?
That's true, but it still requires all the same permitting requirements, Steve, even if there's not a variance request. I don't have.
Right, but permitting doesn't in the city of Boston require any public comment.
Yeah, I wasn't referring to what had public comment, just what we had to do. So we do, when I was talking to David, I was just saying to him that we do have to go through all the normal processes of the building permits, et cetera, ISD, Public Improvements Commission, all of those normal processes.
Okay. But bottom line, let's find a way over the next few months or several months to have some kind of a meeting to show us what the design will look like and just get a clearer picture.
And I'm happy to attend.
Okay.
There's going to become an escalating need, I know, on behalf of particularly abutters, but neighbors generally and elected officials too, to be caught up more often as we move into a construction phase so that people feel at least a little bit more connected to it. So I'm happy to come back anytime. I know the Undersecretary will be as well, in addition to that presentation.
Tony.
Hi, Frank. My name is Tony Crothall, and I have a question for the CAB, the Community Advisory Board, and for Frank. Given the project is going to take several years, I think you said till 2024, I would like to know that there is a parallel construction initiative happening on the Shattuck campus. I'm a little concerned that you're only at RFP status. You know, we definitely want to see those services built on that Shattuck. So it's a reciprocity. And I want to know how quickly will we see that RFP turn into an accepted proposal and, you know, that services are built on that campus that would alleviate the strain on the south end.
Thanks. And I anticipated, because you asked that question back in 2018, I went and reviewed the video. So I have the timeline, although it's so small, forgive me because I can't really read it all that well. But I do know that, so the Asset Management Board for DCAM, same agency we were talking about for the East Newton campus, is also responsible for the Jamaica Plain campus. So the Asset Management Board, which is their governing body, has to have 2 public hearings and 2 approvals before an RFP can be issued. So we had a CAB meeting and a subsequent Asset Management Board meeting and vote to move forward on the process back in, I think, Steve, it was late this November, December, early December, I think. So we got past that first one. The next one is being scheduled. And by being scheduled, I mean, like over the next month. I mean, they're trying to get it done in April, if they can get all of the Asset Management Board members to be able to attend, because everything that's going on, it's all going to be virtual and add some complications. But anyway, I know they're trying to schedule that now. That would be and we'll have a public hearing at that time so that people can have input. There will be a prior CAB meeting as well, as my understanding from the way we've been talking about it with the Undersecretary. Should like to have that beforehand, then have the public hearing, the vote of the Asset Management Board, and then DCAM does not anticipate being able to get an RFP out after that until probably end of summer, early fall. So that is the timeline they're on. Responses to RFPs are, I think they're about 90 days in general. Don't hold me to that one off the top of my head. I just can't read it on this copy that they gave me on the timeline. But they have this timeline worked out through 2026 when they expect, I believe, completion at that time, if I'm reading this.
Completion? Sorry, Frank, what does completion mean?
Completion would mean that the RFP is for a master developer and/or a group of particular pieces of the site development. So they could come back as a health center that wants to put up a small unit. They could come back as a master developer like BMC offered during the RFI process that Steve participated in, Sue and Devin. And they could come back to be the master developer of the whole project. They could come back and offer all but the housing area and leave it to the state to figure out a housing partner to build a transitional supportive housing. They could enter into agreements with the vendors that are currently there, or other vendors, to provide the same services that we require under the vision plan that Fernando spoke of earlier, the most important ones, with some of the off-siting of some of the methadone and other concerns that I know impact the South End as well. So
they only need to, you said 2026, and
yeah,
you're saying
again, don't hold me. I'm just
no. Well, 2026 just for the idea to be signed off.
No. I think I believe what they're trying to indicate on 2026 is that that they expect to be complete with the process, design, and begin construction by then.
Wow.
Now
Okay.
there will be a transitional period between when we move out, depending on how much it backs up to 2024, when we are, at least at this point, intending to move out of the campus. There'll be a transitional period. I think Lauren briefly referred to it, and the time that the construction is done in Jamaica Plain. And the DCAM is actively planning on how that transition will work. Which buildings could be maintained for a longer period of time and kept up for, like the Pine Street Inn, which is a separate building on the Jamaica Plain campus? Could we keep that up even if we were tearing down the main body of the hospital? Are there not ugly trailers, but temporary structures that could be put up to house those vendor programs and continue them throughout while the buildings were being built? So that's all part of what DCAM's building planning process is right now, and will indeed have to be at least sketched out, if not incorporated, in the RFP process.
Okay.
Can I just offer, Tony, can I offer a helpful comment, I hope? And Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, and Desi, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that 2026 is a long way off, and we're all really concerned about the fact that the total disposition of the entire Shattuck campus being put off until 2026 sort of means to us that it isn't available as a resource for us today. But there is one piece that is optimistic for us, and that is that there's a 2-acre set aside that is currently used for housing the methadone clinic and current housing that is specifically today and is designed to grow today and tomorrow. The ultimate disposition of the entire 13 acres is a different question, but there is a set aside couple of acres within the campus that is active today, that is used by providers today, that can in fact be expanded tomorrow, and that offers us an opportunity for us to be able to provide either services or housing or whatever else we might need on a more immediate basis. So don't despair, Tony. At least we've got a couple of acres that we can work with.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you.
So we're past 9 o'clock now, so we should probably be wrapping this up and letting Frank and the rest of us get back to the rest of our evenings.
Thank you.
I just want to ask, does anybody who hasn't spoken have a brief question or comment that they want to ask before we adjourn? I don't.
David, this is Jonathan. Really quickly, did we address the pickup and drop off times?
What is that? Explain what you mean.
For the folks coming in to get treatment, where the buses are going to be?
You mean the Department of Corrections?
Correct, yeah.
So the question, I guess, is when that traffic would begin in the morning and when it would end?
Yes.
So services, the outpatient services unit does not provide services before 8:30 in the morning in Jamaica Plain. I anticipate it'll be the same time when they are beginning to offer services in the outpatient department at East Newton. So that's when the transports would want to be there, would be the start of the day for them. And then the end of day, again, it's, I believe right now, outpatient services closed at about 5:30, 6 o'clock in Jamaica Plain. I'm sure that the HOC and DOC do not go that late because they have to get the more than one prisoner back by transport to the prison and locked down again in the prison, I think by the time of mealtime. But I can get more definitive times for you, Jonathan. But that's my general understanding of what is currently going on. And that would be the practice in East Newton as well.
Great.
Thank you for that. Yeah, any additional information that you could provide as you gain further clarity would be appreciated.
Thanks. Will do.
So, Frank, I'd just like to ask you to speak to one other thing. So there, you know, there's a whole other conversation we can have, but we won't have tonight regarding the actual operations of the hospital once it gets going. But that's not till 2024, so we can postpone that, I think. Just one quick question. What should people, in particular abutters, but residents, be expecting just over the next several months? I think you said construction will start in earnest in July-ish. Okay.
Right.
And then maybe we'll see you and Lauren again in the fall, but what should we expect in the meantime?
So the Department of Public Health user group input, which means all of our doctors and nurses and engineers, you know, facilities managers and everything else, all of their input is being brought to a close now on the design development phase of the project. The intention is to have that finished by the end of March. All of that input will be incorporated by the design team, and that will be presented to DCAM by the architectural design team for budget reconciliation. So this is what we had budgeted for this. This is what it's now coming in at. There's actually 2 different accounting firms that do it. You don't want to know all that, but so it takes a little bit of time. By the end of April, we should have that resolved and the budget resolved and the budget confirmed for all the fit out costs. That will then have concomitantly, DCAM will be building out from the end of March what they call the construction packets, which includes all of the requirements that the construction companies will have to provide in the actual building of the building, if you will, the reconstruction of the building. So they expect to have them out by June. They expect construction, as I said, to begin in July. That will begin with demolition. You know, the facade isn't anticipated, which is the most evident to the neighborhood. The facade changes won't be until spring of 2022. So I don't know if that adequately addresses what you wanted to understand, Dave.
No, I think it does. And Fernando, I see your hand up, so you just please be brief.
Very quick question here. You mentioned that the design is going to be practically finished in a month or so. If the design is completed by then, the logical thing would be that you present that to us. I mean, once you give away the contracts, it's all done. Any changes that we may want to have in your plan are not going to be possible unless you change the contract with the contractor. I think we need to have somebody or a group of a few people, especially abutters, have a capacity to take a look at the plans before this happens.
So, you know, that's what I committed to, Fernando, is to bring that back to DCAM to see if we could have a presentation at a future meeting of this organization, to have the architects actually go through what is.
That's fine, but I mean, it should be early enough. So it should be early enough that changes can be made if we want to propose some changes.
Yeah, and just to be clear, so that people don't think more of what is being built into the design is being done. This is I'm talking about what the design of the interior of the building is and how operations are going to be accomplished, from the operating room to the anesthesiology suite to the diagnostics to the inpatient beds on the DOC and DMH and DPH units. So the exterior of the building is not going to be changed in size or shape. It is the facade that's going to change and the plaza. Those are the two things that are going to look
I guess
different.
the main concerns would be the access, as somebody else was talking about that, exactly how is this going to be done? I mean, I heard what you said, but it's much easier to see it in the plan. And we can look at it and say, okay, well, that looks okay. I mean, I don't care what happens inside the building either. I mean, that's not my concern. My concern is how is it going to impact the neighbors, the neighborhood, the people that live near there, and us outside the building. Okay. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Well, that's what we were talking. I'm sorry, Fernand. I hope you didn't mean my yup was, or you didn't think my yup was dismissive. I was just saying, yes, that's precisely what I told David. I would talk to DCAM about having a presentation to this organization to accomplish.
Great. So Frank, you and I can talk about that, and then I can let people know when we can make that happen, because that's absolutely a great idea. Okay, so it's 9:15, so I think we will call it a day on this, but thank you, Frank, and thank you also to Lauren, who I know had to leave earlier, but appreciate your coming. This is an important conversation.
Thank you, Frank.
And thank you, everybody, for staying so late.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Nice to see you, Tony.